Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We'll be starting here in just one moment, so thanks for your patience and thank you for being here. Alrighty, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the third webinar in NGA's Energy Innovation Webinar Series. I'm thrilled to see so many folks that have already joined and are continuing to join, but in the interest of time, we'll get this going. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Christian Roderick, and I'm NGA's Public Affairs Director. On behalf of all of NGA, we are delighted to have you join us. Northeast LDCs are at the forefront of our energy future. They are committed to supporting and achieving the ambitious climate and environmental goals that have been set across our region. From researching and investing in emerging energy fuels and technologies to adopting new strategies to support efficiency and emissions reductions, NGA members are leaders regionally and nationally. At NGA, our commitment is to foster an environment of collaboration and forward-thinking dialogue. This series reflects our dedication to supporting our members as they embrace innovative solutions that not only address today's energy challenges, but also pave the way for a resilient, sustainable future. I would be remiss if I did not take this opportunity to note that this series is a prelude to our inaugural Energy Innovation Summit taking place September 25th and 26th in Springfield, Massachusetts. More information on that event is on our website, and I hope to see you all there. If you are interested in being involved or want to learn more and you can't find that information on our website, please reach out to me. I would love to hear from you. As an additional reminder, this series is taking place every other Wednesday throughout the spring and into the summer. Our next webinar is May 28th, focused on differentiated natural gas as an emissions mitigation tool. I hope I will see you there. Now, as we begin, if you have questions, please use the chat function, and I will do my best to monitor that and make sure we address as many as we can at the end of the conversation. And with that, it is my pleasure to introduce Faye Brown, Director of Gas Delivery Solutions and Future of Heat Engineering from National Grid, who will be discussing integrated energy planning. Faye, thank you. The floor is yours.
Thanks, Christian. So I'm just going to grab the screen and then start my presentation. So bear with me as we do that little bit of juggle. All right, you should be seeing the slides. So again, thank you, Christian and NGA for giving me this opportunity to speak on integrated energy planning. Over the course of the presentation, I'm just going to share a bit about what we've been doing for like 2+ years in the integrated energy planning arena. We actually did start our work before we even knew it was called IEP. And before I go, I'd also like to thank the National Grid team, which includes folks from our gas side, our electric side, customer, and our transformation teams, that we've been really working hard together over the past couple of years to just really understand what integrated energy planning is, and kind of how this to kind of forge our path in this space. So just a little bit about me. So coming up in July, I'll be celebrating my 23rd service anniversary with the company. I joined in 2002 in the energy management department. That's what it was called before energy efficiency. And after that, I moved into our operations engineering department, where I spent that's where we perform our system planning. And that's really a bulk of where my career is spent, with the exception of a few years as a lead resource planner in our construction department. With my current hat of the gas delivery solutions and future of heat engineering, I first wore that in 2017, and those responsibilities included the participation in the Rhode Island System Reliability Plan Technical Working Group, and that's where non-pipeline alternative program was first introduced, and that was prior to when we operated Rhode Island Service Territory and the transition to Rhode Island Energy. Future of Heat Engineering really kind of took off in Massachusetts, and that was added to my responsibilities in about 2022. So just here's a little bit about National Grid, actually a lot of bit about National Grid. What I just wanted to focus on is that on the map where we have, and in Massachusetts, we have 2.3 million customers, about 1.3 electric and just under 1 million for gas. In the map, you can see that the purple or pink, depending on what your screen colors are, is our gas only service territory. The blue, the lighter blue anyway, is our electric only service territory. And the dark blue is where we overlap with ourselves. And that actually only represents 28% of our service territory. So 72% we overlap with another EDC, mostly Eversource. So that really just kind of shows that we need to plan together. We need to plan cross utilities as well as internally to be successful for the Commonwealth. Just kind of giving you the numbers in towns. So in gas, we operate in 200 towns, and about 120 towns is where we overlap with Eversource, and that represents about 50% of our LPP inventory. The 60 towns we overlap with ourselves, and that's 35% of our LPP inventory. And then in Massachusetts, there's 40 municipal light plant companies, and of those 40, we overlap with 21. So that actually represents 17% of our LPP inventory. So here's like the regulatory picture in Massachusetts. So our regulators, across both gas and electric orders, have spoken that integrated energy planning is kind of like part of the future of energy planning. The 2080B order, which is our future of gas proceeding docket, this is where the department finds that clean energy transition will be coordinated between both LDCs and electric distribution companies. They are requiring that all future gas network investments will require an analysis of non-pipeline alternatives to show prudency on the gas investment. And then also required in the 2080B order was to for every Mass LDC to file a target electrification demonstration project by March 2026. For the future of electric proceeding, the electric sector modernization plan, that's also where the DPU also supported our proposals as the first step in developing an IEP process. And from that order, they also required us to establish a joint utility IEP stakeholder working group. So kind of here's a picture of, kind of like the traditional energy planning that we're used to and where we need to move to. So the traditional planning shows two separate planning where the electric is planning separately, but from the gas. In the future, we'll need to consider the electric infrastructure, the gas infrastructure, and then also working with customers and actually communities as we shift towards the energy future. So kind of here's a little bit of progress on what National Grid has been doing, and what we're working on right now and where we're headed. So we've actually in the last 6 months, my VP had actually presented this at another meeting, and a lot of what we were working on then is actually in the first column now. So back in we did pilot desktop analyses. We also have completed white papers, both internally and with the Rocky Mountain Institute, that included peer benchmarking. As mentioned, so in the electric sector modernization plan, which was approved last summer, we included an IEP chapter with working with our joint EDCs. In December, as mentioned, that it was a requirement out of the 2080 order to file a target electrification demonstration program. We actually filed that last December, and it's in the procedural. It's being adjudicated right now. And then in April 1st, we filed our climate compliance plan that was also required under the 2080B order, and on April 1st, and that included a stakeholder-informed NPA framework. So what we're working on right now is we're continuing to evaluate IEP capability needs, both internally and across the joint utilities, cross utilities. We're establishing a data sharing protocol and continuing cross utility collaboration. And then we're also, as mentioned, that we're required to engage stakeholders. We're starting an engagement process with IEP stakeholders at the end of the month. And so where we're headed, we're going to continue to develop the IEP and NPA processes. These are new ways of working. I always say we're like adapting our current processes with these different steps, because we will still be identifying work, both on the gas side and electric side, but how do we coordinate that work together? We're investing in new capabilities, not only adding resources, people, but also tools and software. And I think a lot of the coordination with stakeholders and peer utilities is going to continue because we'll want to share learnings, not only with the common, kind of within the Commonwealth, but also, with our peers across the country. So I'm just going to highlight a couple of details on some of the examples over the next couple slides. So I mentioned we conducted a desktop analysis. We started that effort about 2 years ago in the summer of 2022. And that's where, kind of working with our gas integrity group and our electric distribution planning and asset management group, we selected 2 towns. It was really a grassroots effort, tabletop exercise, and where we selected towns that we provided in our overlap territory, so where we provide gas and electric service. We also tried to look for towns that had a high inventory of leak-prone pipe, but it was lower risk, relatively speaking. And then, as we looked at these towns, we realized that we needed to have diverse conditions on the electric network. And once we identified those 2 towns, being one urban and one more suburban, we performed 2 different analyses. And our initial analysis was full electrification of residential gas customers. And this actually identified some, many many feeders that needed to be upgraded, but we also identified some feeders that didn't need upgrades. And that kind of led us down to what we now call our target electrification analyses. And that for those feeders that likely didn't need upgrades, we kind of did, we actually had maps up, and the engineers on the gas side identified dead end segments on those feeders. And that's where on those segments, we did the analysis to determine, if there were any upgrades with these targeted segments. For that analysis, we had actually 3 scenarios where we had like a low added load on the electric side for residential heat conversion, a low, medium, and high. And that's where we were able to kind of, determine what the impacts on those feeders were. So here are kind of like the some of the initial findings and learnings. So for full heat electrification, it was really location dependent. And it was dependent on the size and the capacity of electric infrastructure to take on that new heat pump demand. So the graph on the right, it might be a little small on your screens, but what the graph is showing is just a representative of what the results were. And you can see that the winter normal load is represented by the black line. The 4 different bars are the gray is the base winter load. The orange, the blue, and the yellow are the low, medium, and peak. And you can see from the different bars when you add how those bars are above the winter normal rating. And that means that added load exceeds the capacity of those feeders. And towards the right is where you see the results have the feeders that likely won't require upgrades with that added load. Some of the learnings that we had is that, it was a very manual process. So we do need new tools and additional resources to kind of bring that analysis to scale, not only do more than, more than one town, start to work with different towns, and planning together. So we also noticed that there's a wide range of potential peak load impacts because we know that the housing stock out there, since this was a residential analysis, there's different size homes. So what is the estimated, what should be the assumption of the peak load impacts of electrification? There's different system characteristics and locations that drive outcomes and investment needs, both on the gas and electric system and even by the customers. And one thing to note is that in this Venn diagram is that customer adoption is key. So we can get this engineering right, but we really need to engage the customer to understand what their needs are in adoption and what information they need to do so. Cross-utility collaboration is critical. Over the last year, the coordination between what we call the joint LDCs in Massachusetts, as well as cross-utility of both gas and electric. And we've just started engaging the municipal light plant providers in this process. So lots of collaboration across, because it will take, not to borrow the phrase, but it will take a village to see into the decarbonization future for Massachusetts. So here's just some highlights from our external white paper with RMI. Non-pipeline alternatives are intended to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and as well as integrated energy planning is how we need to understand how the gas and electric and customer energy systems interact. The graphics on the right are just some examples of NPAs. The first is avoided replacement. So if you need to avoid the replacement of main, you need all the customers to convert. Avoided capacity expansion. So it's really just, for an example, a system reinforcement. You need, let's see here, sorry. You need the overall, you don't need 100% of the customers to convert. You'll just need, them to, a combination of reducing gas load as well as electrifying. And then avoided capacity extension. So that's where, we need to educate customers on what their decarbonization choices are. So avoiding the extension of our system when we're also trying to decommission. So some of the things that we learned from this peer learnings is that current NPA projects reflect diverse energy goals across, different states and even within the state. There's no one size fits all cost benefit analysis. So as we were developing what our Massachusetts NPA framework would look like, we needed to kind of take those learnings on, what will tell us is a cost prohibitive, when a project is cost prohibitive and non-viable. And there's a range of criteria to weigh. And then funding, for NPA projects, we're actually kind of grappling with that now. And, we have different tools and pathways to do that. And to conduct IEP, we need regulatory support to enable cross-utility data sharing. So we actually just recently in Massachusetts, back on March 11th, the DPU approved a data sharing waiver for utilities for the purpose of integrated energy planning. So that was a big step, but we also have to put protocols in place and new tools to make sure we do that and meeting the criteria that was approved by the DPU. We need utility and municipality partnerships. So, one big thing as far as that, customer adoption is really working with the municipalities on what and communicating with their constituents on the sustainability goals for each municipality. And then individual customer persuasion. So each customer has a different, kind of the communication plan, the engagement for each customer might be unique to them because as a home, as whether you're a homeowner, whether you're a renter, whether you're a business owner, it's kind of really understanding what the customer's journey will be to make it a scalable, to make NPA strategy scalable. We'll have demonstration projects, so it'll help us learn different aspects of that. But and through those learnings, we'll be able to scale our efforts. A big thing for customer is and all the efforts is policy change will be needed. As I mentioned, we filed our target electrification demonstration back in December. And so the scope, just some high level scope, is that across 14 LPP segments, we have an average about 8 customers per segment for a total of 118 customers that are targeted. What our proposal includes is really removing the cost barriers of converting so we can learn about, customer adoption. And also cold climate air source heat pumps. So as mentioned, we'll need 100% of the customers on LPP segments to agree to fully electrify to allow us to decommission any pipe segments. So this will help us in our journey of kind of understanding the customer's journey, beyond what we've worked on and on engineering. So the program goals is to test how target electrification can eliminate replacement of LPP through electric alternatives for all gas equipment that will enable gas decommissioning. So it's not just converting the heat, but also all the appliances that are fueled by natural gas. The program locations are residential homes in Leominster and Winthrop. And there's in that table, our total estimated program costs are $11.3 million. So again, what we are doing now is that we've conducted kind of what we call a digital process and reimagination that so that through that effort, we're going to be developing tools, and that really needed to understand what the estimates are for what analyses are needed. So like anybody, this is a very new process for us. So doing that estimates, how many are going to be needed to be done on the gas side. We know that every single project will need to be evaluated. And for just our GSEP program alone, our LPP remediation program, that's actually almost 500 jobs a year, not including, our regulator stations, our transmission work, and our LNG plants. So that's a lot of NPA analyses to conduct, but then also, so that's why we need tools to do that more do that more automatically than manual. As you can imagine, we need to have NPA project management to kind of really keep track of where each of those projects are on in the step of our processes within gas, and then also the handoffs when we need electric analysis performed, and as well as our BCA analyses. And then for those projects that are viable, we're going to be turning those over to our customer teams to execute. Gas assessment. So some things that, can we do hydraulic feasibility? So those are probably resources we need to add. Gas and electric mapping and modeling. Is there going to be a universal platform to view both gas and electric assets as well as any other attributes of each system? Streamline the electric assessment. So a lot of the effort when we've been working across our, kind of our just utility IEP working group before we engage our stakeholders is really what is needed for the electric analysis for NPAs. Is there, is it a detailed capacity analysis, or is it something that can be kind of like a, kind of a first look of what the capacity is on the electric system? And as mentioned, the NPA benefit cost analysis. So we've been working for the NPAs. What does that benefit, the BCA test look like to ensure that the project is cost effective? And as I mentioned, the IEP data sharing and framework. So there's a lot of work going on right now just to get just put that in place so we can actually start sharing data as well as, requesting analyses on the electric side. So I'm just going to give you a bit of an overview on our NPA framework that we proposed in our that is proposed. So just highlights on what the NPA framework was and required what the DPU orders said on the NPA framework. So as mentioned, the 2080B order required that all projects that are seeking cost recovery have to be analyzed, have to consider NPAs in the initial NPA framework. So what that meant is after December, every single gas project would need to be reviewed. So we internally in National Grid, we put together a proposed NPA analysis evaluation of our projects and then with our joint LDCs, we also proposed an interim NPA framework ahead of engaging our stakeholders. And that engagement was for the full framework that we developed in collaboration with them. The proposed NPA framework that the DPU required had some principles laid out in the B order as well as the 2080C order, which is known as the clarification order. Those principles are safeguarding ratepayer interest and maintaining affordability for customers, ensuring safe, reliable, and cost-effective natural gas service, ensuring compliance with state and federal laws and regulations, minimizing the burden on low and moderate income households as the transition proceeds, and then facilitating a just workforce and the energy infrastructure transition. The DPU order did not specify any criteria that we needed to use in the NPA analysis framework. It just stated that good faith engagement with stakeholders and consensus, where possible, will support showing of reasonableness in the framework. And from last fall and into into the most of the winter, we worked with a consultant and the joint LDCs. With our joint LDCs, we developed an NPA working group, and that was to solicit input from stakeholders in the NPA framework. So the next couple of slides, I will walk through the proposed NPA framework. So to the left are the steps, the high-level steps. So the framework isn't the actual analysis that every LDC does, but it is just a high-level steps on what is to walk through the NPA process. So we start with project identification, initial viability testing, system feasibility review, electric system review, the benefit cost analysis, project authorization, project prioritization, and then finished by project execution of those projects that are viable. The NPA framework, each step is accompanied with different requirements the companies must fulfill when reviewing their projects. It ensures optimal use of resources by avoiding time and resources and expenditures for projects that are not likely candidates. So that's one thing that our stakeholders agreed with us, is that if it's not a likely, if it's not a likely candidate for an NPA, don't, ensure that, we're not spending time and resources to further the evaluation. So in project identification, this is pretty much similar to how we identify projects today, but it includes, includes the NPA identification process step. Just a high level timeline. So it's all, obviously each project is different, but just a high level timeline. We provided our stakeholders to kind of just really understand what our process is and, what is needed to adapt the NPA analysis in our process. Here's the different programs that are operated at a high level by each LDC. And in doing this program identification, we were able to kind of identify which programs would require an NPA review and which ones wouldn't. So the ones highlighted at the bottom are ones that aren't kind of really suited for the NPA review, or at least the disposition is that an NPA is not viable. So emergent projects, other reliability projects, metering facilities, and information technology. So as you can see above, the kind of not highlighted are the ones that will require NPA analysis. And then in our project identification, we also had what NPAs are suitable for each of the programs. So an example of that, I'm not going to drain the whole slide, but for GSEP, as mentioned, for LPP decommissioning, we need full full conversion. And those full conversion are represented by electrification or the installation of thermal energy networks. But energy efficiency, you can't, the reduction of demand won't facilitate decommissioning. So those, as well as behavior and a supply side solution, are not suited for LPP decommissioning. We also included traditional gas solutions. So asset rehabilitation is one, and then also just if all items to the left aren't viable, then also the traditional gas system investment is still a viable solution. In the initial viability testing, this is where we kind of determine what the safety and reliability needs are, the timing of the project, customer composition, and regulatory compliance, and then upfront cost comparison. So these are the different things that we look at to determine if the project is viable as an NPA. And if it is, it moves on to our system reliability review, and this is where the hydraulic model is consulted for. Can you? I call this the can you live without that pipe, like that regulator station. That's what we're looking at in the hydraulic review. If it does pass that test, so simply, kind of the easier concept, if it's a dead end feed or versus a main that flows gas to not only the customers that are connected to that pipe, but also beyond that. So is it feeding other customers either downstream of that pipe? If it doesn't, then it'll move on to our step zero, what our EDCs are calling a step zero analysis, where it's just a kind of a high level electric system review, and through that, they'll provide some costs. And if the gas project, if the electric project is greater than the gas capital project, kind of different thresholds will be identified. And, if there's a greater expected timeline for the electric upgrades than the gas project, or it requires a detailed electric study where the study costs are greater than the 25% of the gas capital costs. So those are different kind of thresholds that will dictate if it needs, if it'll move further in the NPA process. When it does move to electric system review, that's where we'll get a detailed electric system review, and we'll get the information that's kind of necessary. So thresholds that end the NPA process are a negative electric rate impact measure test, as well as if the electric system upgrade timelines exceed gas project need. Just going to keep an eye. Sorry, I'm just looking at the time, so I know we're only here till 12:30. So just go quickly, just so we can leave time for questions. The next step is the benefit cost analysis. So we're actually proposing to perform 4 tests, where a participant cost test, a gas RIM, so gas rate impact measure test, an electric RIM, electric rate impact, and the total resource cost test, which is the same test that's done with our energy efficiency projects. For every project, the companies must use the TRC at a minimum to determine the NPA viability. So, and the other tests can be, informative on other aspects of the viability of the NPA. Right now, we have kind of some different models that are in place, and our next steps are engaging a third party to kind of really verify the different tools and the inputs. But this is the test, and then once it passes the BCAs, we have a project authorization test. Step. And that's actually, as we start, we may not have a lot of projects, but as we go, this step is similar to like our capital investment planning or investment improvement. At National Grid, we call it sanctioning, and that's where, we have to sanction, the dollars spent on executing the different NPA projects, maybe in a program sense. So we don't, that really imagines, when we have a lot of projects to execute and we need to manage not only the capital spent on NPAs, but also the resources. And then similar to that is prioritizing the projects. So if we have many projects, say 10, 20, 30 projects, we'll need to prioritize those projects so that, as we envision that for the future, we included this step in the framework. And then finally, project execution. So in project execution, that's where we'll hand off to, kind of our customer teams, our energy transition solutions teams. And that's where they're going to engage the customer and kind of engage a customer in the customer acquisition step, implementation. So implementation of not only the electric system upgrades, but also working with the customer on their behind the meter upgrades, such as home electrification, and then also the installation of energy efficiency measures. And then once all that work is done, then it's also the implementation includes gas pipeline segment decommissioning. So it's kind of cutting cap in that main and purging it out of service. And then through this process, we're going to also kind of have our post electrification evaluation. So really understanding what that new energy use is for the customer, and where available or where we offered, we'll disperse the incentives. I think that's my last slide. Oh, nope, sorry. So there's so just next steps. So we're going to continue meeting with our IEP Joint Utility Working Group as required from the ESMP order, and then and with other EDCs on process for NPAs and IEPs. Actively participate in the IEP Stakeholder Working Group process, which is kicking off at the end of this month with stakeholders and EDCs. And then last but not least, continue to advance our learning. This is a very new space, both in integrated energy planning and non-pipeline alternative analysis. So with that, continuing our learnings, kind of change our ways of thinking, adapting, and then building our capabilities in that space. And that'll also include demonstrations in target electrification and network geothermal. So Christian, that's all I had.
Hey, thank you so much. This was perfect, and your timing was great because we've got about 6 minutes left for questions. As a reminder, you can use the Q&A function or the chat to submit questions. I see one question already. How is cost recovery of electrification efforts associated with an NPA handled? Does the electric utility pay for the retrofit of the home? How are customers held harmless from net increases to utility costs following electrification? Can you speak to any of those questions?
I can only speak to what we've proposed in our target electrification demonstration. So in what we propose in the recovery for those segments is that the gas decommissioning would be recovered through our because those are LPP, we'd be able to recover those costs in our GSEP filing because those are gas projects, so that's still gas work. The electric system upgrades and those are going to be facilitating electric assets, new assets. So those will be recovered through the normal electric mechanisms. But what we propose for the customer upgrades is what we're proposing as part of our demonstration program filing and recovery under that, if approved. Hope you're still on mute, Christian. Is there another?
Sorry about that. Great. Thank you for that. A question from our very own Paul Armstrong. Can you speak to the time frame required to complete this more complex IEP analysis versus LPP replacement planning? What challenges does this create for you all, or for the industry or the customer regulators?
So there's a number of different things that need to be in play. What we're what we can embark on the gas side is really identifying where, you know, where we can decommission the system. So where it really is good for us to electrify or good opportunities for us to electrify, given that, as I mentioned, maybe identifying all the LPP segments and seeing, you know, kind of putting that forward as electrification opportunities, knowing that, you know, some of our pipe is needed to, you know, kind of maintain service safe and reliably because of the hydraulics. But, you know, that's like a first step, you know, so, but kind of also engaging in communities. I think the chair had just said in the Senate committee hearing is that, you know, maybe starting, one of the senators anyway, sorry, so had said, you know, maybe starting with the municipalities in the municipal fossil-free ban. We're actually starting to work with Eversource. Well, we've been working with Eversource because the city of Newton had approached us on, you know, kind of trying to find those opportunities for electrification since they knew that they have motivated constituents on electrification. So it really is a grassroots effort, and really I can't speak to the time frame because it does need to kind of have different venues to ensure that we, you know, find these paths forward. But thank you for the question, Paul.
Fantastic. Thank you, Faye. Well, we are at 12:27. I see no more questions, so I think that means that you gave the perfect presentation and there was nothing left unturned. So thank you
Thank you.
so much for your time
Thank you,
today.
everybody.
Yep, thank you everyone for attending. And again, we'll be back here in 2 weeks for the next webinar. We hope to see you all then. So thank you very much.